is set up to serve the soul of Detroit. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, praise be to He.
You asked interrogative question around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric back with the Soul of Detroit. We are starting early today because we have a special guest, Craig Mauger, who's breaking some big news today. We're going to let him talk about that before he has to go and actually finish breaking that big news. But we're talking today about Lee Chatfield, the former Speaker of the House, who turns out to have been one of the most prolific fundraisers in Michigan legislative history. And I think we had an inkling about that. But just how much he raised and where it all went, only Craig Mauger knows, and he's telling all. So he joins us again this morning, and of course, he's a Capitol reporter for the Detroit News. So, Craig, thanks for coming in.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I don't know where all the money went, just some of it.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. That's the problem with our laws is that you got to be a pretty resourceful cat to find out even where 15% of it is. But in this case, when you're talking 15%, you're talking seven figures, and Craig's going to tell us a lot of it went to just a few people, some of whom shared DNA with Lee Chatfield.
Oh, what a shock.
Including a guy who shares DNA with the woman he shared some DNA with, but that's a little complicated, and we want to try and keep it sophisticated, so we're going to get back to that in just a minute. But before we get to Sean Windsor, who dials in again, he's zooming in from his safe house and Vineyard in Washtenaw County. So that's a very, very convivial place to recuperate. Mark Fellhauer is here in studio, and we will be joined shortly by Carl Erickson of Altus, who is going to do a live taste test for us with the new original Altus. I know that doesn't make sense. We'll explain that when he gets here. And the new Sportsman, which is a pretty malty treat. So we're going to have Carl here shortly. But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the people who make this show possible. That is Luke Nowacki and Hall Financial, who have been generous to sponsor this show almost from the beginning. Hall Financial is where you can get a deal done fast, which you want to get a deal done fast because those interest rates are going up almost as we speak. Is that not correct, Mr. Fellhauer?
Well, that is correct.
There's a degree in economics from the University of Michigan.
Breaking news.
Economics?
I got a new read for him. Oh. I mean, no, I'm going to tell you all this stuff off the top of my head.
Oh.
Hall Financial is the most client-focused mortgage company in the industry. They're now covering the cost of your appraisal, saving you up to $750. Over the last 2 years, home values have drastically increased, which means you could be sitting on thousands of dollars in untapped home equity. So right now, a cash-out refinance could help you get some money to pay off debt or start remodeling, do one of those home projects everyone loves doing. Take the next step and chat with the 5-star team at callhallfirst.com. They have nearly 5,000 5-star reviews. Why would you go anywhere else? Get started today. Once again, that's callhallfirst.com or call them 866-CALL-HALL.
And when you call them, ask for Dan Morrison and let him know his pal ML Elric sent you.
I was going to say they want me to do read one of the reviews, but I knew you used them, so you would give me a good one.
Yeah, I gave him 2 5-star reviews, and if houses weren't so damn expensive, I'd be looking to do a third deal with them. But when you're unemployed, it's really a bad time to be purchasing property. But if anybody could make that deal work, it would be Dan over at Hall Financial. But the good thing is I'm a big saver. And so I can be unemployed for a little while because I've planned for the future. If you're someone who needs some help planning for the future, our pal Luke Nowacki is a good guy to call.
Yeah, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4740, and he's going to give you rational financial advice. The market is totally insane right now, all over the place. Stocks, bonds, how do you allocate that 401k? What do you do with a 529? All that fun stuff. Get advice, get a strategy. Once again, Luke Nowacki, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748.
Because Luke will make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
Yeah.
So there's a different sweetheart that has Lee Chatfield in the news. Often when our speakers of the House leave, and it happens every 2 years because of term limits. It's like a revolving door. They get into lobbying, and we really don't hear that much about him. Lee's had a few problems. He made some comments about same-sex relationships that cost him a job, a very lucrative job, working in southeastern Michigan. And then it was his sweetheart, who happened to be his brother's wife, so that's a little creepy, who got him in trouble with well, I guess, I don't know, at one time the Republican Party was really big on morals, and maybe they're not anymore, because he admitted to, well, yeah, I did have sex with that woman, but I had sex with a lot of women, and I didn't have it with her when she was underage. So I guess that's okay. We're not the fun police, so you guys can work that out on your own time. But this also opened a window into his lifestyle, both as speaker and beyond, showing that he raised a lot of money. Nobody knows more about political fundraising in the state than Craig Mauger of the Detroit News, who reported that through various entities, Chatfield raised $7 million, and nearly $1 million of that money went to the Friends and Family Plan. So, Craig, take it away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you all having me on. I mean, essentially, we're at this moment in state government in Lansing where we've had lawmakers for years now using nonprofit funds that don't have to disclose who their donors are or where the money is really going, have basically been, used by the majority of lawmakers. These funds have been running rampant, and now these allegations against Lee Chatfield have a lot of people in this city worried that maybe investigators will start looking at these funds, and we don't know for sure whether that will happen or not, but that is a lot of the concern among the individual operators here at the state capitol. The funds we do know about, the money we do know about with Lee Chatfield, shows that he was one of the biggest political fundraisers this state has seen. Millions upon millions of dollars in campaign donations pouring into his candidate committee and 4 political action committees that he operated. Yes, that's right. 4 political action committees at the same time. And he was essentially using these funds to boost House Republicans' efforts to maintain a majority in Lansing, but also he was using them to pay family members and friends and their firms. He paid $50,000 each to 2 of his brothers for wages over his time in Lansing. He paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees to a firm called Victor Strategies, which was operated by 2 of his top staffers. And what this gets at, is what comes of this type of self-dealing. We don't know if what these individuals were doing with this money was improper. On its surface, it seems to be allowed under Michigan law. It more than seems to be allowed, it was allowed under Michigan law for a lawmaker to essentially channel money that they were raising from political donors, from interest groups, to consultants who were directly connected to him. That seems to be allowed under state law. And it would also permit, down the road, if there was someone that wanted to take advantage of this, someone to essentially self-deal. If someone else did this, and we don't know all the details of what was happening with Mr. Chatfield's funds, but you could see a situation where there could be a lot of problems here. If someone picks someone to be their treasurer to oversee their funds, and that person is also running the consulting firm that is the #1 vendor of those funds.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about incestuous relationships in politics. Well, this fills the bill in every sense. It was incestuous in that he was having an affair with his brother's wife, and the money was incestuous. The money was coming into the campaigns. It was coming into the various committees. It was going back to the family. But the 2 biggest beneficiaries of this political largesse were his director of external affairs, who was already making $116,000 of the city's money, the state's money, which is really our money, and his chief of staff was making $164,000. Craig reports they were getting money on the side, both being paid by the committees, both being hired by entities that probably wanted to win favor with influential peoples like, I don't know, the Director of External Affairs and perhaps the Chief of Staff, and perhaps with the Speaker of the House himself. As Craig reported in the Detroit News, and we'll have a link to that story on our website, everybody thinks this is troublesome, but nobody thinks it's illegal, which tells you just what a dog pile our campaign finance laws are. But Craig, I'll tell you, as someone who ran for office, everybody I could get in my family who could help out on my campaign worked on my campaign. You know how much they got paid? Zero. In fact, my wife took a leave of absence for a couple of months to do some back office stuff just to kind of organize some things. She wasn't being paid by her employer, and we didn't cover her salary because when you run for office, it's understood that your family is a part of the campaign and that you're running for office to help other people, not to help feather your family's nest. How often do you see this where people use campaign funds to basically write checks to their kinfolk?
It does not happen very often. I mean, there are definitely situations where lawmakers' campaigns will reimburse themselves or a family member for something that was related to holding office. You know, let's say your family member bought a ticket to like a political dinner and you, the office holder, were going to attend. You reimburse that person the $50 for the ticket because it's a political expense. Stuff like that happens. But when it comes to family members being paid wages to actually work for the campaign, that is extremely rare. And it's exactly because of what you're talking about. For the wide majority of these lawmakers serving in Lansing, they're not as influential as Lee Chatfield was. You know, the Speaker of the House decides what bills get voted on. That is in his court to decide. Most lawmakers don't have that kind of power. And most lawmakers depend on their family members to work for their campaigns as volunteers. I had one lawmaker, Senator Ed McBroom, who said, you know, he would never think about paying someone like his staff members or family members this kind of money because he was scrimping for every dollar that he could raise to run his campaign. He said he would be lucky to give his volunteers pizza at the end of a day of door knocking. So this is very unusual.
And it's extraordinary that these Menards, and if I had a better singing voice, I'd say make big money with Menards. They were paid handsomely by the state to do what, in my experience, has been a very full-time job. If you're chief of staff for the Speaker of the House, that really is an 80-hour-a-week job. But on the side, they were running a consulting firm, and they were taking all kinds of contracts. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, how did they explain this?
Yeah, I have not seen anything to this extent in state government. They have not really explained themselves. I mean, Annie and Rob Menard have been very quiet through all of this. They haven't answered my questions. They haven't answered other reporters' questions. Actually, Annie Menard is still on the state payroll last time I checked, which was last week, making $40,000 as an event and affairs coordinator and appears to still have her consulting business going.
Well, how could she just scrimp by on what the taxpayers are giving her? I mean, she's got to have the side hustle.
Mm-hmm. And she's the treasurer. I mean, I don't even know what anybody's official title is. She was the treasurer for his political action committees. Is that what she was?
She was the treasurer for 4 of the PACs. She was also heavily involved in nonprofit organizations, at least one that was directly tied to Lee Chatfield. She was listed as the main agent for one of these nonprofits. Her consulting firm, Victor Strategies, was paid in 1 year in 2020 $150,000 by this nonprofit, the Peninsula Fund. So, I mean, all signs are with that nonprofit, which was raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, that she was crucial to deciding what that organization was up to. And again, with that one, we don't know all the details of how it was spending its money. We know that it was spending lots of money on trips. And I think it was $150,000 on trips and entertainment for public officials they disclosed. We don't know where those trips were to, what that entertainment was, but we do know that kind of vague description of what the expenditures were.
Really dumb question, Craig. Why did you have 4 PACs? Why would anyone need 4 of them? Is there like a limit? I mean, isn't the idea of PACs like you don't really know where the money's coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with these PACs, we do know these PACs are different from the nonprofit in that we do know where the money's coming from.
Okay.
Why have 4 of them? Well, excellent question. And it's because he was such a good fundraiser. And this is rare in state politics as well. The PACs can take in unlimited amounts of money from donors. So if a donor wants to go to the PAC and say, here's $1 million, the donor can do that. The catch is when that PAC wants to turn around and give money to someone else, there's a limit on how much money that PAC can give to a candidate. So when you have 4 of these PACs, you can essentially give 4 maximum contributions to a candidate, or as Speaker Chatfield did, to the caucus committee of House Republicans. If you want to boost the caucus committee, you can now give 4 maximum contributions by having 4 PACs. This is essentially, a way around our contribution limits, but it's a way around the limits that everyone in Lansing appears to be on board with. I mean, this could very easily be something that they fixed, saying you can have 1 leadership PAC if you're an office holder, but they all know that this is occurring and they're all allowing it to continue.
So are these PACs, do they have different missions? I mean, is there one that says PAC to preserve the Second Amendment, PAC to limit government, PAC to fight mask mandates, PACs, or are they just like PAC A, PAC B, PAC C, PAC D, PAC them all in because we're going to spread the money?
It was essentially the latter of those. It was his PACs were named Chatfield Majority Fund, Chatfield Majority Fund 2, Chatfield Majority Fund 3, and Chatfield Majority Fund 4.
So I was just being a smartass. I didn't think anybody would name something so obvious, but that was way more obvious than I was positing.
But you're saying none of this is technically illegal that you can find out. Is there any illegality in what he did with the money that we can figure out?
I mean, on the surface of what we know now, it meets the requirements of our state law, which granted are very loose. And there's a lot of holes in these campaign finance laws. But from what we know on the surface, this all seems to be allowed. I mean, there are some potential catches here. If you are paying wages to a family member and you're paying them large amounts of wages, like Speaker Chatfield was, there are certain tax withholdings that person has to do as an employee of the campaign. We can't tell from these disclosures if those tax withholdings were happening or not. That's something that the campaign finance experts that we've talked to have highlighted, saying, were they withholding the amount of money that they were supposed to because of this income that they were making off these various committees? We don't know that. There are we don't know all of what's being alleged at this moment, because Rebecca Chatfield, the sister-in-law here, who alleges that Lee Chatfield was abusing her sexually from the time when she was about 15 years old, her attorney, Jamie White, has said that there are some type of unspecified financial allegation involving Speaker Chatfield that is also out there. We don't know the details of that.
And as Craig has reported, Chatfield's attorney in these defending him against these allegations of basically I guess, sexual assault by this young woman who went on to marry his brother. She said he's done nothing wrong. Everything's above board, and there's no illegality here. So we want to make sure that we get that out there as well. But Craig, follow the money is a big thing, and one of the reasons why we're talking about Chatfield is because he was such an influential guy. He was involved in supporting some projects here in Detroit, so this has an impact on Detroit. The fact that these people who worked for him were being paid taxpayer money means some of our money went into their pockets. But people ask me, how does this compare to Kilpatrick? And Kilpatrick had family charities, and he had a nonprofit that siphoned money off to friends and family and things like that. But I have to tell you, having spent years looking into that and having read the work you've done in just the past month or two, Chatfield has taken this to another level. This appears to be way more ambitious, and it appears to be way shadier than Kwame Kilpatrick was, and that is saying a lot.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating situation too. As your listeners are thinking about this, this is in some ways the tip of the iceberg in terms of all of the fundraising that happens in Lansing. I mean, we are somewhat rare among other states where such a large number of the lawmakers who serve a block from where I'm talking to you right now in the state capitol have these nonprofit fundraising accounts where they're raising money from people that we don't know who those people are. We don't know what they're doing with the money. We don't know if they're giving it to family members to do things. We don't know if they're spending on things that are loosely tied to their obligations than they should be. We have no idea because there are no disclosures for these groups that let us have a window into that. And this just goes on and on. There are a lot of people who are worried about, what's going to come of all of these allegations with Chatfield, who are people that donate money to these type of funds. To the lobbyists in Lansing who work closely with the lawmakers are watching this. This is a big potential story in Michigan government.
This state is notorious for not being very transparent when it comes to government, from where the governor is going herself. And I mean, we learned all that a while ago with the whole plane thing, to this situation with Chatfield. Is there any reason to think this will ever change? Because it benefits the people that make the rules.
It benefits the people who make the rules. I think this Chatfield situation is going to spur more talk about reforms. It already has. Senator Ed McBroom, the Senate Oversight Chairman, has been talking about introducing some type of bill that would limit the amount of money that these type of accounts can pay family members and staff. Who knows if the legislature as a whole will be on board with that. Ethics proposals were not a big part of Governor Whitmer's State of the State speech. If she wanted to highlight that issue last month, she could have. She chose not to. At the end of the day, the people who run the state legislature know how to fix these things. They know the bills that they could take up to change what's happening, and they're currently and have been for years choosing not to do that. And that's just the facts of the matter.
So, Craig, before we let you go, because we know you've got some work you're hoping to break today, were you able to determine whether there were particular entities who were especially generous in fueling these individual PACs and these nonprofits? Because we should be clear, the PACs have to disclose things, but there are also outfits where the money goes in and we don't really know how it comes in, and we have some very vague details about how it goes out. Were there some folks who were especially generous, and have you been able to ascertain, if there were, whether they got a return on their investment?
I have not been able to dig into that as much as I want to, and I think that's a great idea for a follow-up. I will hold up this document right here. This is the tax filing for 2020 for the Peninsula Fund, which is a nonprofit organization tied to Lee Chatfield and his staff. This organization raised $753,000 in 2020 from anonymous donors. $753,000. It's right here. You can't really see it. From anonymous donors. We don't know who those people are. So if you want to hide that you're doing legislation for something, for some donor that's tied to you, there's a easy mechanism to do that in Michigan. Have them give to one of these nonprofits, because they don't have to disclose anything about where their money's coming from.
Yeah, it's an outrageous situation, and apparently totally legal, which is even more outrageous. Craig, before we let you go, what's the next big scoop coming out of Craig Mauger at the Detroit News?
We have a story today in the news. Go out and read it on our website if you can, about this push that Donald Trump's campaign was involved with to have Republican presidential electors submit a certificate claiming that Michigan voted for Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. We've gotten our hands on some emails that we're detailing in our story today. So thanks for the opportunity to plug that important piece.
Yeah, so check that out at debtnews.com. We'll have a link to all of Craig's stories that we're talking about on our website, which is mlsolvedetroit.com. Craig, thanks for coming. I know you got to work, but keep breaking the big stories. This was a story, the affair with Lee Chatfield and his sister-in-law was broken originally by another news organization, but like all great reporters, Craig said, nice job, now I'm going to steal this from you. And so now he is driving the Chatfield bus, which, as we heard in some of the stories, the Chatfield bus made stops at the Shinola Hotel, at a strip club downtown. So, some of that money did go into the local economy. So we should thank the former speaker for that. So thanks, Mr. Chatfield. $1 at a time into a G-string, but I guess it all gets declared on taxes at the end of the year.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Because strippers never lie. Thanks, Craig. We'll have you on again soon, so keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Oh, what an amazing story that will go nowhere. You know what I mean? I hate to be that person, but you just feel like nothing's going to change.
Well, the interesting thing is one of the guys who Craig quotes in his story who is pretty outraged about this is another Republican, a Senator Ed McBroom.
Yeah.
And he's talking about
Good
doing
guy.
something about it. And right now, when you're in the legislature, if you're not a Republican, it ain't happening. So the fact that a Republican is talking about doing this is significant. And when Kwame Kilpatrick got into trouble, there were some things that he was doing that that were legal, that benefited politicians. And I remember quoting somebody at the time as saying, the only people who can change this are state lawmakers, but they'll never do it because they stand to benefit from it. And lo and behold, state lawmakers did make a change that closed that loophole. So it is possible that when we have one of these outrageous situations, we could have some reform. But cross your fingers, because I got a feeling they're going to spend most of this year fighting over the budget, fighting over masks, fighting over a whole bunch of crap that allows them to run out the clock on this. Because when I exposed State Rep Betty Cook Scott for not going to work anymore after she lost a primary election and her political career was basically over, she had to go to work once a week, actually, because she had to go to submit her expenses so she could get a check. I spoke to the Speaker of the House at that time, who was Tom Leonard, who was going to run for Attorney General. And he said, oh, yeah, we really should do something about this. But, we're real close to the end of the session. So I don't know that I could get everything going by the end of the session to really do anything about this. But thanks for bringing it to our attention. It's outrageous. And I said, well, okay, you know how this place works better than I do. And, we put all that on TV. Not too long after that, he got up all involved in a bunch of other shit that hadn't even happened until after we had our interview. So, there's always time to get something done if you really want to get something done. But a lot of the times, these guys don't want to get anything done.
Hey, Carl, good to see you.
Hey, we are joined in studio, and I should have told Sean this because he might have snuck out in a hazmat suit. But we are being joined by Carl Erickson, the godfather of Altus beer, and he's got a couple of god uncles there, but they're not here.
One of the godfathers.
That's right. One of the patrons, who is, you've heard us talk about Altus on this show for a long time. The Detroit original that's back. And I know a lot of people have tried it because they keep saying, hey, is Altus still on your show? I said, well, it's still on our shelves. And Carl hooked us up with, he was kind enough to make a keg of beer available for the Winter Classic that we put on at Clark Park that raised a lot of money.
How quick did that go?
It went pretty quick, but we didn't finish it. It was a half barrel. And so we took it to another rink and we put another dent in it. And the guys who skate at that rink have their own locker room. And they said, if you want to leave this behind, we'll finish it off and we'll drop the keg by your house. And I said, okay, but I've had people say that before, and I've had to pump out the keg, and it's a very heartbreaking thing. Anybody who's gone to Michigan
Can't believe
State
you can't finish it.
knows you can't pump out a keg. And the next day, I got a phone call from this guy. He said, "Hey, I'm dropping the keg by your house."
Totally
I said,
dry.
"Is it empty?" He said, "It's empty."
Nice.
I said, "Well done." So, and that was the original Altus. The Sportsman is, I think we would have finished it that night.
Yeah, it's a little different. It seems a lot of people really, really like the Sportsman.
So we're going to do a little taste test here. Sean, this is going to be theater of the mind. I want you to pretend
Sean.
you're tasting this and then describe the sensation for us, because you are a wizard of the words.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a Sean we know and love.
So while we're passing these beers around, Sean, fantastic column about the Flores situation. Talk about how Jim Caldwell, case closed on this notion of whether black coaches are really just getting the run around. I mean, you nailed it. They never should have fired Caldwell in the first place, at least not for the bum they brought in. And cheers.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And the fact that he hasn't got another chance. I mean, come on. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write that, and what kind of feedback you got, because I imagine your inbox was was packed pretty hard after that.
Let's start there with the inbox. I was actually shocked because I got emails from readers who were worried about my inbox. Right? Kind of like
euphemism.
Yeah, right. Kind of like you just mentioned. I would say of all the emails I got, I had one or two that pushed back a little bit. And, well, what about the players? We should have equal white and black players and that kind of thing. Just not understanding power dynamics, history, the country.
We do. We got Dylan McCaffrey, right? Or no?
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, I think it's just, Mike, I think it's because it was at the time I wrote it, and this could change here because there's still some openings in the NFL for head coaches. But at the time I wrote it, there's one black coach out of 32 teams. And I think that's just so striking to people. They're like, okay, yeah, that's a problem. So what are they going to say, right? What are they going to push back? How are they going to try to rationalize that? And that was really kind of the theme that I had. Plus, real quickly, Mike, I remember when Caldwell was let go, and he struggled with some things like all coaches do. None of them are perfect. None of us are perfect. So, did he have the talent to win more games? Probably not. And I look back at what I wrote, and I remember getting an email from a reader who was black at the time saying, look, why aren't you treating Brad Ausmus this way? Who was the Tigers manager at the time, who was a little bit more in over his head, way in over his head more than Caldwell was at the time. And you kind of look back and you think, God, was I fair with that? Was I looking at the larger context of what was going on? And I'm not sure I had been. And so I was motivated by that in part.
And I remember when Caldwell. Now, when you say Caldwell didn't have enough talent to do better, you mean the players, not that Caldwell himself couldn't have done better. Because he took a team to the Super Bowl. He's credited with really helping Peyton Manning. Well,
not just that. And real quickly, the last team he got to the playoffs was the first time I think in modern NFL history a coach had gotten a team to the playoffs without a single Pro Bowl player.
Yeah. And what's funny, I just thought of this as you were talking, because I was going to ask you, what's the most black coaches the NFL's ever had at one time? It couldn't have been more than half a dozen.
4 or 5, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
So this is where my mind went. There's one more black coach in the NFL than there is in the NHL.
Right.
I mean, the NHL's about to lap the NFL. They just got to hire one brother, and they're tied.
But Sean, why is it when you do talk about black coaches in the NFL, it's always Caldwell, and then I saw the Texans hired Lovie Smith. I mean, it tends to be recycled. And there's this big youth movement for head coaches in the NFL. Where are the young black coaches that are coordinators now? Why aren't they getting looks?
Well, you think about Byron Leftwich, right? Who's the offensive coordinator for Tampa, who was part of a Super Bowl team last year. Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator with Kansas City. That's a pretty good organization, right? Been in 4 straight AFC championship games. And you keep seeing these names and then it doesn't happen. And then sometimes you'll see stories that hint at personality, which I think is code. You know what I mean? It's just, and here's the other thing to me, Mark.
There's a lot of coaches with bad personalities. We saw someone.
Jim Schwartz.
I was just going to say, we just saw someone interview in Minnesota who has a risk.
Exactly. And that's what black folks would say. And I wrote about this in the column. John Thompson, the iconic basketball coach for Georgetown, said a long time ago, look, we it's not just equality. I mean, well, it is equality. We want the chance to fail. We want a chance to be imperfect. We want a chance to get hired based on certain things, even if our personalities aren't right, fitting into certain kind of stereotypes. And I think that's the key, and that's what you're speaking to. But real quickly, Mark, I'm curious what you think about this. There are no black owners, right? Mm-hmm. And those folks are of a generation, and folks with that kind of money still, you're comfortable with people ultimately, I think, that look and sound like you, and that's the problem. And the ownership in the NFL still reflects the larger issues in our society. I mean, and I think that's the issue.
It may be. I feel like sometimes maybe that's a little too simplistic to say. I mean, there are a lot of black general managers. I mean, we have one here in Detroit. I mean, there's one in Minnesota. There are a bunch of people in the front office that are, but coaching, it's really weird to me. And so I was thinking about this, and hear me out, and maybe this is a flawed theory, but there's this big youth movement among coaches, and when you look at these young coaches head coaches of these NFL teams, they didn't really have a playing career, so they must have started a lot younger in their coaching routine. Does that have anything to do with it? Like they work their way up the ranks, and where maybe some black players that would be black coaches just are still playing?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of young coordinators, but yes, it is also a matter of opportunity at the coordinator level and who gets promoted. And the examples I just gave you with Leftwich, and although he was a quarterback, obviously, in the NFL, and Bieniemy was a player, but you're right. I think that there's a lack of opportunity there too, and that's reflected. But I really do believe until we see a change with the owners in the NFL and have that be a little bit more reflective of the what's the right word here, Mike? Just the demographics and the changing sort of tide in our country, then we're really not going to see that kind of change. The NBA is very different, right? The ownership's a little bit different there.
Well, and this kind of applies to all people. There was a book written about, I think it was about admissions at Yale, and in the early 1900s, you're like, wow, we have a lot of WASPs going to Yale. So how are we going to change this? Well, we got to diversify our board of trustees and the people in admissions. And so they did. And at that time, it's like, well, we're still not going to have anybody who doesn't look like us, so we'll let some Jewish guys on the board. So they did. And then they started getting a lot of Jewish people going to Yale. And then, everybody tends to favor their own kind, either intentionally or just because there's some sort of ingrained pathways there. But, it's highly unlikely that we're going to get more diversity ranks in the NFL because we're going to come up with half a dozen black owners of football teams. I think I heard that the Broncos are worth $4 billion. I mean,
sure, but you can find an ownership group that is maybe a diverse ownership group, maybe led by Kanye to buy it. Well, no,
but that's
well, they'd have to play in the AFC West, I guess, then, right?
No, but the idea that you're bringing up an entertainer, right? And I'm not getting on you, Mark, but that's what we're talking about, right? The opportunity and black folks that have the kind of money, right? To buy teams.
Yeah, but hopefully we don't have to wait for that, because I think this is an issue that we need solved before a bunch of ownership groups come together and a bunch of old dudes want to let go of their teams. I mean, these teams get handed down like bad genes in a poor family.
How much do you think this lawsuit from Flores really hurts the NFL?
I don't. That's a good question, Mark. I think in the long run it'll help the NFL, right? I mean, because we're talking about it here. I actually think this has a chance to change some things. And let's not forget some of the specifics in that lawsuit that may or may not have anything to do with race. I'm not entirely sure, but the allegations from Flores that the owner, Stephen Ross, the U of M alum, this business school is named after him, was offered to pay him $100,000 to lose games.
I'm sure that's what the NFL is worried about the most, to tell you the truth.
Well, not only that, but then if you read the fine print, if you read some of the details in that lawsuit, when he said he would not do that, then he felt like he was branded as difficult to work with, which again is code, right?
Well, you know what? I'm just going to throw this out there. There's a lot of reporting in Miami after he got fired before the lawsuit that he was just kind of an asshole to everybody in the front office. And he told, I think, Kenny Sills, do not talk about politics or race or anything. And so, there might be a possibility that regardless of his ethnicity, that he was hard to work with and was kind of an asshole.
Yeah, so was Rick Carlisle.
So real quickly, the point is,
Rick Carlisle took the Mavericks to a championship.
Sure, doesn't mean I thought he was doing a good job as a coach, but obviously we don't see all the behind the scenes stuff that the
Rick
staff.
Carlisle's still in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
he admitted to being an asshole,
difficult.
and he's gotten chance after chance.
And that's the point. Black folks deserved a chance to be a prick.
I think Flores could have gotten that. I think he could have gotten that job in Houston until he filed a lawsuit.
Maybe, but I like the sacrifice that he made because he knew that was going to cost his career.
Yeah, no, I could see a college team hiring him.
So, Sean, what do you think of that Sportsman? You've had a chance to swish it around a little bit, let it hit your palate.
I think it's smooth, a little earthy. It's delicious.
Carl, is that what the
I don't know about
connoisseurs would say?
Smooth, yes. Earthy.
How is it different from the regular one?
Well, everything's earthy.
There you go. The malt is toasted in this, and there's a little bit less hops than in the Altus original. So you get a nice kind of malty, toasty flavor at the beginning with a nice crisp finish, but not the crispier finish that you get in Altus.
So that's
earthy.
That's the first thing that Carl, and I'm not a beer connoisseur. I'm pretty much. Is there a beer in front of me? That's a good beer.
Yeah.
When we had the exchange of the keg, I gave him an empty one. He gave me a full one. That's how they do it at Altus. You buy one keg, and you know it's the never-ending cornucopia. But we had a beer, and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's a little maltier than the original, and I like the original, but I think I like Sportsman a little better."
I'm hearing that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that a little bit.
I just like that it's in a can
Yeah, yeah.
and not a bottle.
There's a reason for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Cost?
No.
Oh.
Cans are more expensive.
Really?
And you're seeing it across the beer industry. A lot of different breweries are going to cans. For the number one reason is the beer lasts longer. Light doesn't hit it, and it seals better than a bottle. I've always liked cans because I like to bring a lot of beer places. And they fit well in coolers.
So I always like
Pack
long
better.
necks. You know, I've always that to me it's always been a great way to drink a beer. It's a shitty way to transport a beer, and they really clank around in the cart if you're taking them back to return them. But cans are pretty handy. But you were telling me earlier that there's a can shortage.
Yes. Well, a couple things.
So Mark, you got to give them your returnable when we're done.
I just returned a bunch today.
You don't.
I'll take them then. I'm still unemployed.
So Ball, the major can manufacturer in the United States, came out and said, number one, we're raising prices for 2022 by 30%. Number two,
Is this a supply chain COVID thing that we hear so much about, or is it an opportunity to do so?
yeah, or is using that as an excuse
Okay.
to do so. Another thing they said is you have to order 5 truckloads of cans, not 1 truckload of cans.
Okay.
So, ordering 5 truckloads of cans.
How many cans is that roughly?
Every truck is about 278,000 cans.
That's a lot of cans.
It's a lot of cans. And there's a lot of small breweries that never order more than 1 truck a year.
So is that why all the craft beer is in bottles?
Well,
Usually, most of the time.
I think you'll see more and more of them going back to bottles if they're not
Yeah.
in bottles now. And that's the major U.S. Can manufacturer. You can get cans overseas, but they cost a little bit more.
So you got 5 truckloads of cans.
No, we bought 1.
Oh, okay.
And that'll last us a while.
Okay.
And we're kind of waiting to see if maybe a broker will get involved to buy the 5 truckloads, and they might be different cans.
And bust them down among a lot of you small guys.
Right.
Okay.
That's damn good.
So tell me about the bottle, because I remember I was drinking the original Altus one time. I said it tastes a little bit like Stella to me, and you're like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And then you were explaining to me green bottles and brown bottles and clear bottles. And
Sure.
What's that all about?
Yeah, well, Stella number 1 has rice in it, so it's not a true beer. Anyway, well, I'm going to get yelled at for that, but it doesn't have the Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law. But
So it's 9 Reisken Hackenbach.
right.
Okay.
The German purity law of 1516. Water, barley, hops, and yeast.
Okay.
So if you add something else in, it doesn't follow that. But so if you put beer in a green bottle and you use a lager yeast, it will get skunky. Hence,
Like St. Pauli, Stella.
Heineken.
Stella, Peroni,
Carlsberg.
Altus, if you were to put it in a green bottle, would get that skunkiness.
But that would be a sacrilege, so you wouldn't do that. Okay.
No. But some people really like that skunkiness.
Where can we buy it? Is it readily available? I already crushed the cans.
Oh,
That's a dime you owe me.
I'm on my second one.
I'll take it back.
Now, so right now, Altus Sportsman is available in independent retailers, and Total Wine actually was cool enough to pick it up. It's not available in any of the large chains yet because we just launched it. We're hoping to have it available in larger chains in the fall or next spring. But any party store in the Metro Detroit area or anywhere in Michigan, for that matter, can order it if you ask for it.
And the regular Altus you can get on the shelves as well, but also
Yep.
at Meijer.
Yep. Also at Meijer and Total Wine. And, well, Plum Market has both of them. Whole Foods, you can get Altus Original. They haven't picked up Altus Sportsman yet. Bush's has picked up Sportsman. So, just the really, like the Meijer, the Kroger. We haven't been in Kroger with either brand. Costco, neither brand. But with Altus, you can get 12 packs of Meijer statewide.
I do think some of those Altus cans went through the redemption machine at Costco, if I recall correctly. But I don't want to. I believe that's a violation of state law, so I don't want to say any more. But Carl, thanks for bringing it in. It's great. I know that. That of those 278,000 cans, there's probably a few that we could take off your hands.
Yes.
And we encourage you guys to go get some. Go to altis.beer. That's ALTES.beer to find out where you can get it. And give me a ruling on the name, because I know somebody's going to send me. It's Altis. It's not Altis. What do you guys prefer?
Well, it's Altis. I mean, that's how they
Altis.
pronounce it. It just means old in German. So German person would say Altis.
Okay.
It's a German thing. You wouldn't understand.
But you guys sell it new.
Yes, we do.
All right, good. Well, you're going to have to talk to the marketing department there. But, okay, hey, Carl, thanks very much. Altis.beer, Carl Erickson, bringing the brew. Boy, if we could get Chef Dave in here with some food, this show could go on for like 7 hours.
That'd be great.
So,
cheers. Thank you.
Altis Sportsman, here's to you. Sean, save that can for me, would you?
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So, our Geek of the Week. Last week, there was somebody walked a nomination on the floor for Jim Harbaugh. It was quickly pulled.
Who put that up there? I put it up there?
No, I might have floated it, and you said he's not a geek. I'm wondering if any.
Why did you think he was a geek last? Why do you have to bring this up again? Why do you put? I don't want to defend the guy.
Geek of the Week: Mike McDonald and Josh Gaddis for abandoning ship. No, okay.
No, that'd be a smart thing to do. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? The Gaddis thing's weird, but McDonald? Who wouldn't do that? Right, Sean?
Right.
Thank
Why
you.
is? Well, yeah. What did Harbaugh do that was wrong?
This is just the beginning. And then he's like, this is, hold on, I got a call coming in from Minneapolis. I'll be right back. Actually, you'll be right back for maybe the rest of your career.
Oh, so he's a geek for saying it's just the beginning.
It's everything about it. Going and doing it on signing day, telling people, I think I'm out of here, leaving some instability in a program just when it looked like they had turned a corner.
I find it amazing how non-Michigan people are far more judgmental about this than Michigan fans and alumni.
Oh, I don't think that's true. You know how many people I heard commenting on Mel Tucker, $10 million,
Sure,
and
that's
Sean
what
wrote
Mark's
about
saying.
this too.
That's what Mark's saying.
The fact that
The rivals care more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's put it this way. People have nothing to do with each other's programs, spend a lot of time talking about the other program. I don't. I just think Jim Harbaugh's a geek.
I don't know about that.
I didn't even know until Mark brought up that he was a coach at Michigan. No, I didn't know it because nobody's got
What a
it.
lame joke.
Sorry. But he's not our Geek of the Week because he does something almost on a weekly basis to qualify. So we just gotta cull a herd here. Before Jim Harbaugh, Twin City Gate, I don't know. There was Pizzagate, the totally made up, whacked out right-wing claim that Hillary Clinton and her henchmen were running a child sex ring in the basement of a Washington, D.C. pizzeria that, by the way, doesn't even have a basement. They do have pizza. And the guy who went and fired his gun off found that out just before he went to prison and said, oh, shit, I probably shouldn't have believed that because it turns out it wasn't true. Well, now Steve Bannon and Brian Kolfage, Steve Bannon pal Brian Kolfage and kooky congressional candidate Kimberly Lowe are claiming that the National Butterfly Center in Mission, Texas is run by, and I got to put this in quotes because it's crazy enough that it has to be a direct quote, left-wing thugs with a sham butterfly agenda. Because I think we all, we all recognize a legitimate butterfly agenda.
It's a perfect cover.
Right. I mean, well, think about it. 1 minute it's a chrysalis, it's like it's a cocoon, and then it's a butterfly. What happened? Who transformed it? Is this like 3-card money? Is this some sort of scam? Anyways, Kolfage, without any evidence, said the 100-acre nature preserve is the site of a rampant sex trade. Again, in quotation marks. And I guess.
Mainly because of its location.
Butterflies probably have sex. Right, because, and the genesis is probably that the Butterfly Center, 100-acre nature preserve, was going to have the wall go right through the middle of it.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, don't put that in there. And I think they may have sued the government to stop the wall from destroying this nature preserve. So immediately a lot of people said, okay, they're bad, let's go after them. They became a lightning rod. Well, anyways, Lowe actually visited the Butterfly Center last month and demanded to see illegals crossing on rafts. And she was caught on tape claiming that the Butterfly Center's executive director is okay with children being sex trafficked, raped, and murdered. So I guess maybe that was on the 100 acres of the place that she didn't see. Well, it goes without saying that once again, there was no evidence offered to back up those outlandish claims. So now the North American Butterfly Association has closed the center indefinitely. One of the final straws came during a We Stand rally when it was warned to be armed at all times or out of town, which I'm laughing because anybody who spent time around butterflies know if you're not packing, there's a good chance you could be devoured by the butterfly. So they were already armed, but this notion they should get out of town, that just seems foolish to me.
I really don't care about butterflies or the preserve, but just think about these people's families being put through this crap.
Well, the other thing is, think of people who would want to spend all their time around butterflies. You know, this is not like UFC fighters who are like,
perfect cover.
Yeah. I love the Karner Blue, and if you cross the Karner Blue, I'll put you in a sleeper hold. No, these are...
The executive director being branded, okay with sex trafficking and child murder and rape. It's just... Yeah. Regardless of the butterfly situation, that's just an awful thing to put a person through.
Well, and with no evidence and no basis for it. But guess what? They crossed somebody on something they cared about. So now they could be responsible for the most heinous things you can imagine. And believe me, some of these people have really good imagination. But as we said, this really seems to be coming back down to they got on the wrong side of the people who want a wall. And so now they have to take the fall.
Oh, so
well,
that's why.
We didn't build the wall. And Mexico didn't pay for it. But Brian Kolfage, Kimberly Lowe, and every other nut job who will believe any crackpot theory that justifies their warped worldview, no Altus for you. But you are our Geek of the Week. Altus?
You already messed it up.
Damn it!
See you guys.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. Got the time.
I keep telling Carl, feed me beers till I get it right. So I'll take another Altus, please. So I just realized, boy, I may be treading on some more political minefield, but cheers. Here's the original.
He drank all the other ones.
The Altus. To mark hey, by the way, what's the breakdown on cans for Altus and Sportsman?
Well, Altus still is flying out the shelves because it's in Meyer, but Sportsman really had a strong start. So 250 locations within the first week.
But I mean, most of the 278,000 cans are Altus.
We split it.
Oh, 50-50. Okay, so you'll see Altus in the white can and Sportsman
or Altus
in the red can.
I know he keeps messing it up. That's what I love about it.
Altus.
Altus, that's the right one.
You can say it however you want as long as you drink.
No, but keep correcting him. All right, Sean.
I'll keep drinking them until I get it right, because in my life at least, most of my good decisions come after I've had many beers.
People from the Flint area called Altees.
Altees.
That sounds fancy.
But do they drink Genesee out there?
Hopefully they drink Altus.
There's not that much Genesee out there. And God, when I lived in Allentown, I used to drink a lot of Genesee cream ale. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was like, oh, wow, great. Jenny Screamers. And then I had some at our backyard beer party. I said,
they don't taste like you remember them.
I don't know. It may have been a price issue. But anyways, we are marking the second anniversary, more or less, of the pandemic by playing China Crisis, working with fire and steel. Raising the metaphoric podcast question, is Mark fire or is he steel?
Oh, what a great start to a song.
Where does Sean Windsor fit in? That was Sean saying, "Oh!"